does this strategy also, if you look, I read that you invested in over 100 startups by now. And as mentioned, you are board member, advisor, mentor for many companies that are very successful. Does this strategy work for you? Is this how you choose in whom to invest or who to advise?
I think for me, some of the stuff that I've invested in is where it could be either like the team is like really strong, or some of the bits has been products that I myself am a user of, or that I think has a lot of potential that I could see how it would be used a lot, you know. So for me, one set of products that started to look interesting to me is something that's called like fractional collectibles. And basically what they're doing is they take a highly valuable collectible item. So let's say one item they had is a dinosaur skeleton, and that costs like $200,000. I myself, I'm not going to spend $200,000 on a dinosaur skeleton. It wouldn't fit in my house. I couldn't fit it anywhere, right? But what they're doing is they're fractionalizing
and buy a huge ranch, and then it won't.
Well, I think they were saying actually, some celebrity actually wasted all his money buying dinosaurs and stuff, and now he's going bankrupt. I can't remember which one it is, but yeah, don't do that probably. But what they're doing is they're dividing it up, so now you can buy $5 worth of these dinosaur bones. And so basically they're fractionalizing stuff, and they have like a Banksy painting that I can't, or many people can't really afford a Banksy. Let's say it's $5 million. They divide it up, so now you can buy a $10 worth of the Banksy. And so it's fractionalizing it, and then also creating a secondary trading platform. So kind of like the stock market. So normally if I buy a Banksy painting, it's a lot of work to sell it. I would have to take it to an auction house, pay commission and whatever. These guys are just making it like a trading platform. And so I just started playing around with it, and I'm like, this is really cool and interesting, and I'm excited using it. And then so basically I just had started sending feedback to the team about like suggestions about how they could improve the product, just from my perspective as a user, not saying that like I'm some product genius. I was just like giving them feedback as a user. And then after building up a bit of the rapport, then I just said to them like, hey, if there's ever an opportunity to invest, then I think that it's really cool what you're doing, and I would be interested to invest. And so that's how I ended up investing in some of these, is by being a user and just seeing that, hey, this is cool. I'm a user of it, so it could make sense to invest in it, seeing as I like using it.
So how was the switch in general from a 24/7 entrepreneur to, as you said, more healthy, more inclusive of other things, lifestyle, doing things with more impact? How was that for you?
Yeah, so it's a big shift, and then yeah, like just a big mental shift to get my head around things. I think one bit that was a natural transition for me is that when I first moved to America, a lot of people were very helpful to me, and this is kind of the Silicon Valley ethos and kind of the culture that's ingrained, and why I think has contributed to a lot of the success is that people are kind of trained to help everyone else and not expect anything in return. You know, if someone's asking me for advice and stuff, like, you would be going out of your way to help them, but you're not expecting something in return. You're just kind of doing it for karma kind of thing. And for me, yeah, moving here, people helped me out a lot, gave great advice. And so then with that transition, then that was something that I was passionate about. Like, hey, other people have helped me a lot, and now I am passionate to pass that forward and go and help other people.
And how did you choose your first charity or charities to
I actually just started some charities myself and helped one other guy start a charity just because I was like, actually one bit I did was I just watched this documentary about the United States prison system and just felt that the conditions were really not great. And then I basically just thought through some ideas.
Understatement of the year.
Yeah, yeah. And then just thought through some ideas about how could maybe help them out a bit in kind of, to use startup terminology, like lean startup, like minimum viable product. Like what is something that I could do that is small amount of work that could have the potential to have big impact. And one charity, I actually kind of fell into it because I was reading about this guy who's in prison and had taught himself really advanced math. And he's now made some like mathematical discoveries from within prison. He was actually in solitary confinement and like drawing on the wall these like math equations and stuff. And I just reached out to him to say like, hey, it's great that you have started to dedicate your life to this now, moving beyond just joining gangs and stuff in prison that he was doing before. And so I was like, hey, if you want any textbooks or something, like I'll buy them for you just so you don't have to spend your own money. But then I kind of just built a relationship with him going backwards and forwards. And then he actually had an idea to start a charity from within prison, which is obviously very challenging for him. So I had joined up with him to help him start that. And now we've kind of built it out where it's kind of creating a kind of mentorship program for people that are in prison, starting with math. It will probably expand to things like entrepreneurship and things like that, but basically pairing people that are incarcerated with a mentor in the real world who they can kind of use as a sounding board and a coach kind of.
That's amazing. Definitely let me know how that's going. Looking into the year after the pandemic, what will Jack do? Will he still live in San Francisco, or will he also move to Texas? Will he do charitable work only? Will he still advise? What's the future of Jack look like?
So actually, because of the pandemic, basically, I probably would not have done it in this timeline if not for the pandemic. That in August of last year, I actually moved. So now I'm living in Hawaii. Yeah, moved during.
Okay.
Because just saw that, hey, look, everything's being locked down and the in-person element is becoming less and less important and everybody is spreading out all over. So instead of trying to optimize right now for living where opportunities physically are located, kind of makes more sense for me to optimize for living in an environment conducive to what is a great living environment for me. So that's considering like the weather and environment and things like that. And Hawaii kind of made sense that it's still part of the United States, but still a very warm environment and things like that. I don't like to plan too far ahead because I feel that can also limit opportunity. Like I say to people, like, if I was having like a 5-year or 10-year plan, then that actually could limit me from taking opportunities when they come up. When I moved to America, I got the last spot at this incubator, and they basically gave me 3 days notice to relocate to America. If I'd had a 5-year plan, then I would have just had to be like, oh, well, this doesn't really fit into my 5-year plan. So I'm gonna have to turn down this once in a lifetime opportunity that, you know, entirely changed my life. Instead, I could just be more serendipitous and like see what comes up. So for me, I don't plan really far ahead. I'm more just like, hey, let's just see. I don't know who I'm going to meet. I don't know what opportunities I'm going to see that could just take me in different areas. I actually had a friend, roommate when I was at university, and he, because he was like child genius or something, I don't know, he got into university younger than other people, like he was 2 years younger, and so he couldn't actually like go to the nightclubs and drink and stuff. And basically he, even though he was 16, 17, he had a 10-year plan or something. And it's basically like, all right, I want to graduate from university as fast as possible. And then I want to have like 5 children. And then I already know the children's names and stuff. And then I was saying to him like, well, first of all, you need to find someone who's going to agree to have these 5 children with you and agree to them. Then that was, you're not the one giving birth to them. But then I just felt that having this 10-year plan was very limiting. And then I think he came to that same conclusion, because then he actually, instead of trying to get out of university as quickly as possible as he's planned, he ended up doing a master's and then even a PhD to stay being a student longer, because then he just started having so much fun being a student. And so, you know, if you plan out all your life details step by step, it's very hard to lay that out, and you're also cutting yourself off from all the opportunities that you're not aware of.
And who could have foreseen a pandemic?
Yeah.
Speaking of which, though, we've mentioned it a couple of times, how workplaces have changed, how opportunities or scouting for opportunities have changed. Relocating will change the landscape of the bubble that was Silicon Valley, which many people also had fairly negative opinions about, to locate everything in one place, or let's say 2 places, New York and San Francisco. What do you think will the future of the startup landscape fueled by the pandemic in America look like?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, people, if they're criticizing, if they were criticizing Silicon Valley being so centralized, like, it's not like people created it and said like, oh, this is going to be where everything is. That organically got created, and organically talent got attracted there, and it organically had an ethos of people helping each other out. I was starting a company in London, and I felt that the ecosystem was extremely elitist and not helpful to other people. It was basically like, hey, if I get funding, then there's no way that I'm going to introduce you to my investor, because I had to work so hard to get this investor that there's no way I'm going to share it with you. I moved to Silicon Valley, and pretty much every conversation, it would basically be like, hey, here's my entire Rolodex. Like, anyone that you want to speak to, just let me know and I'll introduce you to them. Like, we had one of our customers in Silicon Valley. We had never even met them in person. And just because they wanted to be helpful, we just asked them. They introduced us to their lead investor. And it wouldn't have even made sense, really, because we had a terrible idea and stuff, but they were just it's so much about helping each other that they would just go out their way to help each other. And London was not like that at all. I don't know what it's like now, but I think a key bit is that could be good to come out of it is if this ethos can be more distributed, which is it's not about every person for themselves. The ethos in Silicon Valley, one phrase that I've heard is like, hey, you get to the top of the ladder and then pass the ladder back down to help the people and help them up, you know? So it's versus the other phrase is like, you get to the top and then you pull up the ladder with you so no one else can get up, you know? It's very conflicting. But I think that if the ethos about helping each other out and being more not each person for themselves, but like, hey, we can actually all succeed all together. We're not competing with each other. If we have very different business ideas, then we're not competing with each other. We can help each other. We're not enemies. I think that can be great.
Would you say though that's influenced? Quick side note. Would you say though that's influenced by a cultural difference, because the UK or Europe in general and America are very different? Something like this.
I think it could be to some degree, but at the same time, I don't know that it would apply to America as a whole. Like if we look at Los Angeles, like if you're moving to Los Angeles as an aspiring actress, like, I don't think the same thing that everyone's going to be wanting to help you. Let me introduce you to my agent. That's not what I've heard the environment is like. I've heard that it's very cutthroat still, and everyone wants to be an actor or an actress and break into this industry. So I don't know that it applies universally to the whole of America. I think what is conducive to it is that Silicon Valley had a bunch of success stories. And so obviously, if you've had a bunch of success, it's way easier to help other people. London hadn't had as many IPOs and breakthrough things like Silicon Valley. You know, there was Google and Facebook and etc. And these all create thousands, tens of thousands of millionaires who are intro startups, and they've seen Larry and Sergey go to Stanford, study there, create a business, and then it become this $100 billion company. And so you can see a clear pathway, and then also people have made money, so they're more able to help other people. In London, because there had been less success and less stories to point to, then I think it is natural that it's obviously a lot harder to help other people if you haven't had success yourself. And in London, there wasn't any company that was the scale of Google or Facebook or these types of stories. And there wasn't startups coming out of the university ecosystem in the technology that we could say, there wasn't a Mark Zuckerberg that I could look up to in England, really. Yeah. And I think that does, I think that would be a key thing, that just, if I was looking in England, there wasn't that many people who'd had amazing success to bump into. In Silicon Valley, just walking down the street, you would run into people who'd had just walk down the street, and then the founder of Dropbox is just walking past you, like just more success in the air.
Yeah, I will say though that that also might have to do with the fact that success is not as much celebrated in Europe overall. There is definitely a cultural component of not celebrating rich people. Let's put it like that. But coming back to, so where do you think where do you think the future of startups in the US, what that will look like in terms of also what the COVID pandemic has, you know, moved along, shifted maybe? We talked about Texas, Miami.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few factors. One as well that I think would drive, that probably is driving a lot of even more companies out of San Francisco, is that there's a kind of general consensus of people, especially in technology, that live there, that it's a very poorly run city from a government oversight level. And then also that they charge extremely high taxes. And a lot of the stances and things they take kind of seem to be anti-business. They kind of, the people running the city kind of do things, they kind of seem to hate business, to be honest, like some of the stuff they do. So they have a tax that just like makes no sense that they had implemented, which normally when you pay tax on your profit, you know? So if you make money, you would pay tax on your profit. San Francisco has a tax on revenue. So it's not even you're making a profit, it's like tax on your revenue. And then that is just like extremely expensive for a small startup that is just getting started. If I do $1,000 in revenue, a lot of that I might have to be paying employee salary, or let's say I have an app, I need to pay like 30-40% of that to the Apple App Store. To get taxed on revenue is really hard to comprehend. And so I've seen companies moving out for that, because, and what you're seeing is like the mayor of Miami is trying to be much more welcoming to startups. He's on Twitter tweeting at all of them, and he's trying to be like, yo, we really want startups here. And people are just seeing that, hey, that's actually pretty refreshing to have someone saying like, hey, come here, instead of just like blaming all their problems on you and hating on you. There's this one bit in San Francisco where Mark Zuckerberg and his wife donated, I think, $75 million to a children's hospital in San Francisco. And so because of the donation, to say thank you, the hospital named their wing after them. So it's called the Chan Zuckerberg Children's Hospital. And then the government or the oversight of San Francisco was all complaining like, oh, this person's a billionaire, we shouldn't be celebrating him and we shouldn't be naming our hospitals after him. And it's like, okay, well, do you want to give his donation back then? Because they're just complaining, even when people are doing stuff that is like donating like tens of millions of dollars to stuff to help out. They just blame technology as the root of evil for everything. And so I think with the pandemic, people are like, maybe I'll move somewhere that is not trying to hate me, you know? And so like Miami, they're making it so that you can pay your taxes in Bitcoin now. And employees of the government in Miami can opt to get their salary paid in Bitcoin. And so I think that other places are just making it much more entrepreneur friendly, and businesses will move because now there's no reason to be in San Francisco. Why would I stay in San Francisco and have all these taxes that are targeting me? I think that people are willing to pay taxes. Like for me, I sold my company, right? And California has, I think, the highest taxes in the entire country. I paid my taxes in California, and that kind of made sense to me because like, hey, I sold my company, kind of makes sense that if I make a bunch of money that I should pay tax on it. That's kind of fair. What is not fair is like, I'm trying to build my company and then let's have all these taxes like targeting me when I don't even know if the company's going to work or not. Actually, you're just making it harder to do business there. So I think more companies are going to go to other cities, and then probably what they're doing is seeing like, hey, most of my employees now don't want to come back to the office 9 to 5. They've liked this working from home flexibility. Maybe they don't want to work from home all the time, but they don't want to work in the office 9 to 5 or, you know, longer than that every day of the week. So probably what they're going to get is more of a hybrid model where I've heard some startups saying they're going to approach more of a WeWork type model. Like, hey, we'll have a lounge where you can come and do meetings and brainstorm with your colleagues. But if you want to get some work done, maybe you prefer to just go home. So you don't have a set, this is my desk and I come here 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. You're more like, hey, if we have a brainstorming meeting, let's come and meet here. If not, just work from a cafe or home or wherever you want.
Would you say that talking about, I don't want to talk about the US immigration system, but that also hiring globally. And for me, coming from Vienna, I see a lot of startups hiring from the East because they're fantastic entrepreneurs, they're fantastic developers that are very, very, very cheap. And they just stay in their country, in their city, and are working remotely. Do you think this will drive innovation and accelerate it to a point we've never seen before, because talent can now be globally grabbed, minus the hassle of relocation, minus the hassle of waiting for governments, you know, to approve something?
Yeah, I think that would definitely make sense. I mean, it was always an option to have engineers in another country, but it kind of felt disconnected if all of your people are in one office and then you've got some people spread out. It felt a bit disconnected. Now with everything being remote, then it does open the talent pool to like, hey, we can hire from anywhere in the world. That there are intrinsically some other challenges still, like language barrier, time difference, accessibility to, in some places it can be hard to buy a good computer, you know, powerful enough to do some of the work that people are doing, like data science or something. But I definitely think it increases the pool of talent and could lead to more like globalization.
Okay, I could talk to you for another hour. I will move on to the end question and I will cut these short. Jack, what's your vision of a utopian future?
I think if we're considering like what does utopia look like and then what does dystopia look like as two binaries, then I think for me, a main thing that does need balance is technology. I don't think that it's a coincidence that like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates don't let their children be on the computer and be on the internet and stuff. Like they are having very strict controls around screen time. And you would think that's a bit counterintuitive that, you know, these like technology leaders are restricting screen time to their kids. Like that doesn't really make sense. But I think for me, I grew up in an age where prevalent internet access was, you know, always switched on. Internet access was coming about when I was around 13 is when it came out for me that at school there was broadband switched on all of the time and stuff. And I feel that one of the challenges I have, and I think a lot of people, is like internet addiction and anxiety created by being switched on all the time. It's hard for me to even conceptualize a lot of the times the concept of being bored, because for me, I'm just like, the internet means there is infinite supply of stuff. Like I never really feel bored because I always have a massive list of things that I had wanted to watch, read, or check out. There's infinite information, and then I feel I don't really experience boredom, but at the same time I feel that it creates anxiety. And so for me, one of the most fulfilling things that or practices that I do personally is maybe twice a year, often I do, is basically going off the grid and switching off from technology entirely for like 2 weeks and just reading physical books, and not be on my phone and on the computer, just technology detox, I guess you could call it. Basically coming out of that, I just feel like massively re-energized, because I feel that it can just be extremely draining, the always on this. And so if I think about dystopian type environment, it would be where you can't escape the technology. Perhaps artificial intelligence and machines and etc. are so pervasive that it's in every area of your life. If you think, if you've seen the movie WALL-E, and then, you know, it's very popular that these people are lost because they're in their technology cocoon. So then, and then like they break out of it and they're like, oh wow, actually it's really beautiful, the, you know, stars over there and stuff. But like, it's because technology can be built where it's removing every need or addressing every need that you have. It's like, oh, you want to exercise, then here's this like tonal and workout machine. You want to like you know, probably in the future it'll be like, oh, you don't need to eat anymore, just like this machine will give you all the nutrients that you need. And so if you have every single need addressed by technology, then you're probably going to become extremely short-sighted and in a cocoon, a bubble cocoon, where you're not aware of you're probably going to lose a sense of your own true feelings, like what am I feeling, because you're not going to be as introspective, and you might not be bored ever, but you might not feel at ease ever. So that, I think, is something to that I am particularly mindful of.
Great. My last question would be, and you can also name more than one, but what's a person that I should definitely, any person that I should definitely interview on the show, a person that you admire, has shaped you, a future builder, yeah, that I should be talking to?
Well, I mean, kind of regarded in Silicon Valley, that he is kind of regarded as the best angel investor in Silicon Valley, is this guy called Elad Gil. And when I moved to San Francisco, he was one of the people that I was referencing, that he helped me and my co-founder out, like, without wanting anything in return. And, you know, I think it says a lot that the guy who has some of the most successful angel investing track record of out there at the moment, that he had helped us out for no gain of himself. Perhaps that's not a coincidence that this guy who was so openly helpful has become so successful as an investor.
Amazing.
And so he's a very interesting person to me.
Thank you, Jack. Amazing. I think we have to split this interview up in 2 parts. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for sharing your insights. I will link to everything that you've mentioned and that is near and dear to you in the show notes. And I hope we'll have a follow-up interview as things progress. And
Great.
I'm sure when we do, you have amazing stories to tell, and you have had amazing things in the past that we could talk about. And so thanks very much. Really, I appreciate it a lot. And I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Everything will be found in the show notes. Please hit subscribe, and we see each other next week at another episode of The Future Is Now.